the next thing that we need to do is to make the input files, and to make the input files you need the program prep for I2CITC. So when we open that, the first thing that we need to do is calculate all the concentrations, and actually the really first thing that we need to do is to set the active folder, because as you can see when you first open the program you can't do anything, you have to first set the active folder. So in your case that is the folder where we just stored the files. So now we can start to do things. So the first thing that we need to do is to give the file name, and if we look for that, that is 10, 12, 14. So you don't have to give the extension. So 10, 12, 14. And what we need to say is that this was a single titration. It is a single titration because the software itself, I2CITC, can also combine titrations, but only if you take, when between titrations, between parts of the titration, you take the material out of the cell and you mix everything. You haven't done that. You've used the traditional way of concatenating titrations, so you have turned this into one single titration. So you tick this box, and what you see is now that the file name here is exactly the same. If I had not set this to a single titration, and if I say that it consists of 2 or 3 titrations, you see that this automatically assumes that your file names are A, B, and C. That's not what you did, so we go back to a single titration. So now we have to type in the concentrations, and M is the macromolecule, or the biomacromolecule, so this is the DNA. And we can have DNA both in the cell and in the syringe. L is the ligand. We can have ligand again in the cell already, and also in the syringe, of course, and we can have a competitor, but we didn't use a competitor in this case. So the first number to type in is the macromolecule in the cell, and in your case that was 0.2 millimolar. There was no ligand in the cell, and there was no competitor in the cell. Then when you did the injections in the syringe, there was no DNA, but there was ligand in the DNA, and the concentration of the ligand was how much? 0.9504 millimolar. No competitor in the syringe, and you did 38 injections. Now, because you didn't use the remixing protocol, you don't have to change this number. This number is only important if you refilled the syringe and mixed everything that was in the cell, but that's not your case. So now we simply press calculate concentrations. Calculations are done. And what has happened now is that there are a few new files that have just been created. And the most important one is the concentration file. And this concentration file shows you the ligand concentration in the cell for all of the different injections. And that number, of course, should be going up because the concentration of the ligand in the cell is going up. It also shows as the second series of numbers the total concentration of the macromolecule. And as you can see, the concentration of the DNA is decreasing slowly because it gets diluted. This is the concentration of the competitor in the cell. There is never a competitor in the cell. And this is, something went wrong. This is the concentration of the ligand in the syringe. And for some reason, the concentration of the ligand in the syringe has been going up. But I think I know what happened. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So what has happened is that because I left the other titrations in, it did further calculations, and it assumed that these are the additional injections. So what we need to do is actually we need to do the calculation again to make sure that we don't have this bit right at the end, because the bit at the end is the result of showing you too much with the software. So we'll close this, but it also shows that it was good to check this file to make sure that it was right. So to make it easy, I'll just close the software and we'll just start right from the start. There we go, start with concentrations, set the active folder. File name is 10, 12, 14. There's a single titration. This was 0.2 millimolar. No ligand in the syringe, no competitor in the cell, sorry. No macromolecule in the syringe, but 0.9504 millimolar of the ligand in the syringe, and no competitor. 38 as before, we can just leave this. We press calculate concentrations. That's done, and if we now go back to this folder, we see actually that we have the right number of injections now. So if you don't first switch things on and off, it does exactly what you need it to do. So these are all the concentrations in the cell and in the syringe for every injection that you have done, calculated based on the concentrations in the cell and in the syringe and the volume that you have used for every injection. And the reason that the software can do that is because it knows what the active cell volume is. Because the active cell volume is a given number. Where is it? There it is. It is a given number in the configuration file that the software has. So we close that file. You can have a quick look at the other files. The delta H, the heat effect file, is still exactly as we made it earlier. The volume file also hasn't changed. The other file, this file, is the titration file, and it basically says that all of the different injections belong to one titration. They're all the same titration. And there's the weight file, which says the first injection is not counted, but all the other injections have a weight of 1. Now this is something that we want to change, because we concatenate the two titrations, so there is a second first injection. So we are also going to set the weight of injection number 20 to 0 as well. So that should be this one. I'll check that by also counting further, because there should be 19 injections including this one that starts with a 0. Yeah, that makes sense. So now save this file, but now I've set that middle injection, that 5 microliter injection, to 0 as well. So now all of these files are ready for analysis.